Welcome to the Profitable Cleaner podcast. Join your hosts, James Harper and Angel Sandoval, bringing you the experts, discussions, and knowledge you want. We talk about sales, technology, marketing, operations, strategy, leadership, mindset, health, God, and so much more. Now, are you ready to profit?
All right. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Profitable Cleaner. James, how are you?
I'm good, man. Super pumped for today.
Yeah, man. I'm excited for our guest today. We got, and here we go, Ulises Ruelas, right? We're going to use the R and we're going to do it right. Ulises Ruelas, financial advisor. I know you work with a lot of people in the industry that we personally know already, but you focus on wealth management, succession planning, anything that has to do with protecting your money and keeping your money. So, Ulises Ruelas, welcome to the podcast, man.
Thanks, guys. Thank you for having me. Super excited, stoked, and I feel so safe to be around you guys. I'm so happy to be here and really just excited to be a part of like this like community and movement you guys are really building and creating. So thank you for letting me be a part of this.
Yeah, man. And for those that, as you guys can tell by the previous podcast, what we're doing first is we're bringing on any roundtable leaders, any keynotes that are coming into the event so that you can get a sneak peek of what you can learn from them, right? We vetted a lot of these people and we're super excited for the expertise that they bring. So, Ulises, just to kick this off, could you just tell people a little bit about you, a little bit of your story, and how did you end up becoming a financial advisor? Like, why is that one of your passions?
Yeah, no, that's actually it's funny. I don't think anybody's ever asked me why I became a financial advisor, but it was definitely a journey to get to this point. So I've been doing this now professionally for individuals and business owners for 10 years. So we're actually hitting our 10-year anniversary this year, and it's wild how fast a decade can go. You know, I'm 38 years old, and I was talking to a buddy of mine. He's in the industry, and I'm like, we're men, we're adults now. Like, like we have families, we have kids, and they see us as like leaders in our families, and now we have to like live by our decisions and trust our instincts, right? Trust our gut. Um, and he's like, dude, nobody's told me that recently. Like that makes so much sense. And I'm like, I've always seen myself as a boy and as a young kid, but now, I'm 38 and this is real go time now, right? Like I have mouths that we feed and stakeholders in my family. But how I got to this point was, I grew up in Chicago. So home for me is Chicago, Illinois. I was my mom was a single mom, and like I think unfortunately for a lot of like Latino, we'll call us first generation, we all come from some kind of like not trauma, but just some kind of not so easy path, if you will, right? So unfortunately, my story is very typical to a lot of folks that look like me, right? Single family, single mother household. My father wasn't around. But so they met when they were like 17, 18. They had me really young. A year later, they had my brother. One of the best gifts that they gave me was actually having a brother a year away apart from us. But we grew up with different perspectives on things. And I got into this space because I just remember as a kid just always feeling like we were inadequate. And I always felt like we were kind of not at the table, if you will. So I grew up in an area in Chicago, it was on the north side. And if you know anything about Chicago, it's a pretty segregated city. So if you live in the south side and you're Mexican, well, there's a lot of pride around being Mexican. If you live in the north side, there's a lot of different types of Latinos. You have more Puerto Ricans, Central Americans, and then you have a lot more white people. So people automatically associate the north side with being a little bit more wealthier than the south side of Chicago. And for me, I grew up in the more wealthier area, but we were in a poorer pocket. So it was really interesting because I was in different worlds. And to my South Side Mexicans, I wasn't Mexican enough. And then North Siders were Mexican, we were poorer. So you were like in this weird space. And I remember going to Catholic school, and my mother, she worked really, really hard. We didn't have much, but she worked her butt off. She was actually the first insight into the sales, where I remember she would take my brother and I, and she would do door-to-door cable sales. and just work and grind for us. But like most people, we didn't talk about investing, saving, what to do with their money, the stock market. We didn't talk about that because it just wasn't on our radar, and we were really on like survivor mode, right? But I was raised with a ton of love, and we lived in a 3 flat building that my grandmother owned. And my grandmother had 8 children, and unfortunately, my grandfather and her split. So she was a single mom too. So it was funny, like these examples of people in my life. My grandmother, my mother, were both strong, badass women, but very independent. And one thing I always admired about them was they were never in like abusive relationships and never stood with somebody out of like financial means. And I remember seeing that a lot happen in life where people were stuck in relationships out of abuse and being in really bad spots where the kids would get abused because they needed that stability that somebody else could bring them. So how that kind of in a time with me is I never wanted to be in a spot where like financial stability was going to be a part of my life, because I did recognize that money isn't doesn't create happiness, but it creates a lot of stability, and that gives you more mental health more than anything. So growing up as a kid, I always wanted to just kind of do the right thing. And I always felt like I was chasing something else because the world around me was just moving forward and we were just kind of surviving, if that makes any sense. But it was cool. Growing up, I had a lot of love. So I was always involved in sports. It's super, super competitive. I had a lot of good friends. And one of the things that I think was really monumental, like my development, was my grandmother had foster kids in the first floor of our building. So I lived on the second floor. My grandmother was in the first. We had a relative who was on the third floor, a typical kind of Mexican upbringing, which was really beautiful because we always had family around. But I always remember that my brother and I, who just had our mom, we felt like we were rich because we had our mom and I had my one brother, where I could look downstairs and there were literally children my age who didn't have their parents. They were torn apart, and then they didn't have their siblings. And I never felt like we were completely behind the 8 ball because I always had people below us that had it always rougher. And that showed me a lot of like appreciation for life, and like it can always be worse because I had an example always down below. Um, but because of that, I always wanted to at least lay the right example to people that were around me. So I was always a good student. I was a goofball, but I always liked school. I always wanted to do well because I was competitive. So I'd always ask my buddies, "What did you get on your test? Oh, I got you better." We compete, and competition was always awesome and very important in my life. So always growing up in school, I was always taking a knack at like studying hard, although it didn't come easy. And math was probably one of my hardest subjects ever. Um, but I always thought, you're Mexican, we could work hard, we could work through this, and that was kind of the philosophy around all that. But how I got into finance was, I grew up, I went to school, I got a degree in finance, and only because my mom told me, Ulises, get a degree in finance. It sounds like it's smart. Like you could have some job security, but what the word meant, I knew nothing about that word. And I remember being in school, like not understanding the topics because again, they weren't taught to us, right? It wasn't part of our DNA or our language. So compound interest, investments, it was just like, just it'd come and it wouldn't stick. And I remember really struggling with it so much to a point where my junior year, like after the first quarter, we were in a quarter system. I remember calling my mom and saying, "Mom, I should change my majors. I think I'm more of like a marketing kind of a person because my personality is so much more extroverted and I'm left-handed, so I'm more creative." And she's like, "No, because you got to finish what you start." And that's something that I really appreciate her telling me is we were operating in the dark, picking this major, and I didn't even know what the career path would really lead to, but I had to stick through what I started. And I'm glad we did because it provided a big foundation for life in the future, even though we had no idea what the word really, really meant, the career really entailed. But I got into finance initially because I thought it would provide me job security. What I didn't understand are the various careers within finance. But I thought if I could do this, I could at least start to set my life up better because, money does create the foundation for a lot of things in life. So that's kind of how I got into that degree, really, because my mom felt it was solid.
Yeah, that's the whole story. He gave us the full story on it.
Yeah.
I like it. I like it. Let's get into a little bit of the financial portion too. Then let's get some people some insight because now I see where your personality comes from. I think like understanding Same thing here. Mexican, come from Mexico, and I think like uh, there's definitely something in there that maybe we don't know how to invest, or we don't believe in banks, or we don't believe in. It's almost like a weird belief in the Mexican community when you're growing up, like, oh no, you got to keep the money under the mattress. Like I know for a fact, and I know my parents don't listen to this podcast, so I can say stuff. I know for a fact they have money saved inside the house,
In
just
the
sitting,
wall.
and I know that for a fact. And I'm like, guys, no, we need to create wealth. So let me ask you a few questions. You said a few points here that I enjoyed. The financial dependence, real quick, because you're right. I think whether and I'm not talking a specific fact like abusive relationship or anything like that, but you talked about a lot of people have the financial dependence on others, and when you're financially dependent, completely dependent on someone else or something, like a job, right? You're not able to really, like you said, thrive. Money's not everything, but then it gives you stability. Then when you have your own money, you're able to do X, Y, and Z. So, real quick, um, how many people that you talk to don't realize that they are one move away from broke or from complete demise, basically? Like, is that common in the business world, or do they think that because they have a business, they're more set than they think? Or is it backwards?
That's a great question. Early in my career, um, I really found myself, the market I was in was working with people that that were one paycheck away from, being in a really bad position. Um, and even business owners now, I think some of the better business owners actually always feel like they're one step away, but actually they're probably one of the most secure, but they're more conservative with money, and they also are more conservative with risk. So it's crazy. Like my grandmother was very, very conservative, and she always felt like she was one move away from being broke, but she was really wealthy, and wealthy in the space that she had options. So I really think that like wealth really, it depends on like your definition and how your life is structured. So if you think about a person, and I know a lot of business owners who may have like, 100, $200,000 every 2 week payroll, right? I mean, that you got to make a lot of money to cover that. And so you're going to feel really limited, even though your business is revenue at $1 million. And to the public, your friends and your family are going to think your business is making $1 million, like you're set, but they're the most stressed out because they have such a big load. Where, my mom, I love her energy because she wakes up every day happy, and her lifestyle probably costs her like $1,500 to 2,000 a month. So she doesn't have to wake up every day to work and survive. Like she could literally, be free. So it's just, I think more than anything, wealth is like, how is your life positioned, and what kind of stress is making money, creating in your world, right? So, so because of that, we really start to talk to a lot of people around, putting themselves in positions to say yes to opportunities versus like struggling to, rise to the occasions and miss out on potential things that could be life changing.
And I know Jim's about to ask a question, so I'm gonna do my last one real quick, James. What are the three, or yeah, what are the three mistakes or top three myths that you would say that people say like, no, no, like my parents think they're like, no, bank, what? What do
Yeah.
you mean you can make back money? I don't know what that means unless I work hard for it, and it's cash. It don't exist, right? Like, what are some three myths that you've seen specifically? Here we go. Not from the lower income, not even middle income. I want from the people that are making 2 mil up in revenue. Let's just go with 10 million and up. The bigger myths, the people that usually are already more educated on it. What are some things that you still see them do that you're like, no, no, no?
Yeah, I think one of the big things is right is most of the times when you start making money, you start to behave as it's coming constantly, right? And as a business owner, the future is never guaranteed. So one thing that drives me nuts is I'll see, big car notes on a person's balance sheet, right? Like really fancy cars. And it's funny, like culturally wise, even right now I'm wearing, purple, right? Like we love to like show a little flash, but we got to be careful in pausing from getting the nice car, getting the watch, right? Like looking the part. So I think a big myth or big mistake I see people do is they want to validate themselves, and rightfully so, because you've worked hard to get to this point, but you don't have to display it if you got it, right? And I think we try to display it before we really are truly there. And I think that's one thing that I always see people really making a big mistake on is, spending more on like their vehicles or the exterior of their financial like ability to purchase something. Because I think anybody that's doing well can probably, pay for an expensive meal, buy an expensive purse, but I would hate to see that. I would hate to look at their balance sheet and say, damn, like, is that now on credit? Do you have money in the bank to support that? Can you buy 10 of them at one time? You can buy one, but can you buy 10, right? Why don't you go buy a building with that money instead, right? So that's one big mistake I have, and I see people doing often, is that they will wear their cash flow producing asset right now versus be disciplined and say, I'm going to wait on that. And it's tough because social media makes us want to display that, and I get that. And to keep up with the Joneses is probably, I think, a thing that people unconsciously do. But we have to, especially as first generation wealth creators, stay away from that kind of stuff. And one of my best friends, and I remember he was really good at this. He was probably around 19 years old, and he was a really awesome saver. Actually, he was 18, 19. We were in college, and he was buying a condo. And I remember him having like $30,000 to like buy a condo. And I was thinking, wow, how the heck did he do all that? And even when he had that and he had a job that was paying him six figures, I remember he bought a car, or a hoopty, we call it, from his sister, and he could afford a nice, luxurious car. And me, I made the mistake. I actually bought a Cadillac CTS when I was making like 45 grand a year. And this guy was making like double of that. He bought a little hoopty from his sister, right? So I share that because I made that same mistake, right? It's like I wanted to display that because I wanted to show people that I was doing the right thing. I was on the right path. But also what I didn't realize is it made me have to work harder and kind of work above and get over a hump versus just kind of build something. And I think that's one big mistake I see is people trying to look rich too soon in life and in their business before their business is really matured. So that's one thing I see constantly that drives me nuts.
Ulises, you use a term I really like, I've never actually heard before, is like first generation wealth creators. And I was driving over here this morning and I was like, there's so many things I could ask Ulises. And I know from a personal experience working with a financial advisor, it changed my life. It actually changed my marriage. Like we don't fight about money anymore because we have a clear set plan. But it's a really disciplined thing that takes years to come into fruition. I want to talk about like leveraging assets. So any business owner listening to this, if they're making money, they ultimately have an asset. Now that asset fluctuates, it goes up and down. And this is going to kind of be a two-part question. So it'll be interesting how you answer this. But when you leverage an asset and you're making profit, I think, and I'm guilty of this. Like I remember having my first business, remember having like $40,000 in a bank account, not knowing what the hell to do with it. Like I had literally zero clue. I knew I had $40,000. That's awesome. That's the most money at the time I had ever seen, or I thought I hit the lottery, right? But then I realized I did not know what to do with it. And going back to my drive over here, I'm like, generational wealth. This is such a weird word because like, what does that actually mean? Then I go and look at your LinkedIn and you just did a topic on the vagueness of generational wealth. So if a business owner is listening to this, they have profits, they have money sitting in a bank account. How can they leverage that to create something like generational wealth? And what does that actually mean? Like from a financial advisor, like what does that actually mean? And how does someone start that process and just kind of walk us through what that looks like?
Yeah, generational wealth is a couple things. Number one is, do you have a system and infrastructure in place to warehouse your money? And while that money is warehoused on your behalf, is it growing for you? But also the generational piece is if you die, when you pass away, we all will, what happens to that, right? Does it get passed on? Do you owe it to people, right? People don't realize that business owners, like I find a lot of startup companies raise a lot of money, but those are a lot of times IOUs, right? So they got to owe somebody stuff, right? Like, how do you really pass it on to those that matter most, i.e. your children, your family? We've got to put some systems in place to make sure that that moves over to the generation after you, right? Or that you're setting them up also so that they move up the scale of economics in life, right? So for business owners, I think a couple of things that are really, really important is I never knew how much money I should have in a bank, right? And Angel, you were asking about this. What are some things that people struggle with? Back in the day, my grandmother included, like she was a really good saver, but because mentally she knew she didn't have a backup plan, right? They didn't have any trust in banks because in Mexico, a bank can just go belly up and then your money's gone. So people would put money inside their mattress, inside the walls, right? Because they just had no confidence in things. And then once their friends and family would find out, they try to steal it, right? So I think back in the day, people didn't have belief in institutions, especially countries that are really corrupt. And you see this a lot of times with a lot of South American countries still happening. One South American company, they put all their banking system in cryptocurrency, and that just, went belly up, right? So that stuff still happens to this day. So I get why people don't have confidence in those systems. Here, as an example, though, one of the things that I never understood is how much money should I have in my bank account, right? Like, what do I have to have? And I can't ask my friend, how much do you have in the bank? Like, it just seems so taboo, but we have to normalize those discussions, right? So, but I have a really cool visual that I share with clients, and I'm happy to pull it up. But in my perspective is you got to do a budget. It's a very simple but very impactful exercise, and you got to do it in different phases of your life. When you're single, when you're married, there are different budgets that you have, right? So when I was single, I was probably making $3,000 a month, and I was probably spending all of it, right? So if I was spending $3,000 a month, I need to have times 6, right? That times 6, 18,000 in the bank, and that's my emergency fund. So my cup should be filled up to that emergency fund, and 6 months of my expenses should be in there. That's the first step in financial security is, do you have enough money for 6 months of your living expenses? Okay, great. But I don't want to have too much in this cup. And as Latinos, we are great, great savers. People don't realize that we can be wealthy because we're great savers and we make good money. Business owners are making some awesome money, big producers, right? But we keep so much money in cash or in savings, and it's not working for us. So only keep 6 months of your living expenses in savings, and don't leave it in cash. Leave it at least in the fireproof safe, but keep it there. But anything beyond that, it's not working for you, right? So the next step is introduce another cup, right? An investment vehicle, because now your money will be working for you while you sleep, right? It's investing, it's appreciating, it's an asset that if you're a business owner, and I see this happening with a lot of business owners, they have all their money in their bank account for the business in cash or in savings, and it's earning 0%, maybe 1%. But I tell them, keep 6 months of your expenses there, but now you have another account you have to have in your business or personally. Have that be an investment account. You can pick and choose if you want that to be aggressive or conservative or moderate, but it's going to grow for you, right? And people think, it's really risky. You're going to lose a lot. Well, the market fluctuates, but over time, if I look at that data and if I zoom out on the story looks way better long term. But the problem is we zoom in too much because we're still living in the moment. And my role is to help you zoom out. I look at a bigger picture to know that even though you're going through ups and downs, the big picture is once you zoom out is really the trend that we're looking at, right? If you look at a baseball player and they're going through a bad streak, if it's a Hall of Fame player, but they're having a terrible month, that's not indicative of who they are. They're just going through a slump. That happens with business owners, right? We have to zoom out. So one of the things I really share with people to create financial stability for themselves, and I'm going to share my screen real quick. Let's see if I can do this.
All right, hang with me for the next minute and a half. We got a quick break here in the Profitable Cleaner because we're officially official. It's like I like to say it. Why? Because I get to take this break and introduce our sponsors. First sponsors is USource. So go to usource.com. That's USOURCE.com. This is a business management platform for facility services companies. No more chaos, unnecessary admin work, or just having to consolidate information. This is about you not being the source of information anymore and having a platform that can give you accessibility, visibility, and control over your operation. So see more, do more, whether you're 1 employee or 3,000 employees, this is the platform for you. So check out our sponsor, usource.com. Our second sponsor, dayporter.com. They will help you with all your outbound, LinkedIn, email, call, and they're going to do it with a team from Latin America. So make sure that you reach out to them, dayporter.com. They can help you hire your next superstar and give you the strategies to go book the walkthroughs that you're looking for. The third one is going to be Melgar Consulting. That's alexmelgar.com. If you're hovering around the $5 million range and you're in the facility services industry, want to hit those 20, want to keep bumping your head and really want to scale, he is going to be able to consult and help you have the right foundation, the right structure, and the right strategies, and the right advisory and consulting to get you past those 5 to 20 million. So go to alexmelgard.com. And last but not least, our fourth sponsor, cleaningprofits.com. That is our annual event for facility services, CEO, executive teams, leadership teams. Bring them out. This is all about transformation. It's all about training. It's all about community. And it's held once a year, this year, September 12th to the 14th. So thank you once again to all of our sponsors. And let's continue on to the show.
It's funny. Like, can you guys see
There
it?
we go.
Like this,
Yeah, we can see it.
I'm such a dork, but I tell people this document like saved my life because it really does give me a lot of clarity into like how to structure people and myself. But for a long time, I would argue with my wife around how much money we should save and how much we should have in the bank account. Well, now it's very clear cut. In your cash, checking, savings, you should have 6 months of your living expenses in the bank, even as a business owner, right? And if you're planning on buying a property or you're planning on expanding operations, don't take that money and try to invest it into the market or try to invest it into other things. You got to keep that cash for short-term kind of goals. So a short-term time horizon in my mind is less than 2 years. So if it's less than 2 years, you have a goal you have in place, unfortunately, let that money sit in the bank, but it's not going to earn any interest for you. But that's okay because it's there waiting to get used. So that's kind of one first piece on there. So from a financial security standpoint, making sure you have this filled up, that's very, very key. If you've got goals that are a bit longer, that's when you can start leveraging the market, right? And there's vehicles out there that are investment portfolios that you can invest into the entire stock market entirely. But if you place, and I use the term parking lot often in my conversations with people and clients, is that money can sit there, but you can take it out, right? They won't get penalized. But if you are sitting on a big balance of cash in your business or personally, don't leave all your money in your savings because it's earning less than 1%. Put it to the market, let it grow. There's a lot of magic that happens when your money grows. If your money makes over 7% over a decade, your money doubles. And one of the things I love working with business owners, especially that are our age, is that I have found is that they have a bigger capacity of making money and they're younger, so they have a longer runway. So money, more than anything, needs time. And people try to think, I need to time the market properly. Well, the reality of it is that time in the market is way more important than timing the market. That's a
So
huge.
I have a question for you now that we're here, now that I'm looking at this. But what about the people that, and I might be one of these people, I don't know, but I know people that are like, man, investment account and like, or mutual funds, like 7% in 10 years, like I don't want to cuss, but it's like fuck that. Like I want to double. I want to maybe like a 30%. Like so, why if my goal is if I have aggressive goals, would
Yeah.
this fit my? What if my long term is sure 10+ years, but I want my property in 3. I want to be more aggressive because I've got let's say the whole like nothing to lose mentality, risk it to get the biscuit. Like is this a conservative type of plan that you're showing right now?
No, I think, and business owners, and I love how you call me out on that. You're like, hey, I can make more investing back in myself. And you know what? That's 100% true, 80% of the time, right? So for business owners, you guys are born different. You're going to take more risk. You're going to make more. Business owners, I want you to keep on taking those swings because they're going to lead to home runs. You're going to make more money. You're going to double, triple, 10x your money. 100%, right? That's going to happen. Just how you guys are wired. However, when you work with an advisor, when I work with people, I tell them absolutely go for the fences because 80% of the time that'll work. But that 20% that it doesn't, let us help you with that, right? So, and the 80-20 rule applies in so many areas in life. It applies in saving, and even investing, right? So I tell people go for that, but let me be that stash of cash on the sidelines so that when things don't work as planned, and guess what? That's going to happen in life. That I've got a stash of cash on the sidelines that's becoming way more efficient. And this will be your get out of jail card, right? Or there will be your saving grace. And also, as businesses, I mean, you look at a restaurant, right? Like I think I was seeing some kind of story where it would take a person like 5 years to eat at every restaurant in Chicago if they did it, if they ate out, twice a week. It's just crazy, like but there's so many failures that happen in restaurants, right? So you think about it as a business owner, you're going to be successful, but you also have a high probability of failing, right? So we have to warehouse your cash so you've got a get out of jail card. Or as you make money, you become disciplined with it so that you're not reinvesting 100% back into those activities, because you just never know. And I think that's one thing that always haunted me is you would always hear about people, and I've heard all these stories because as I interview my clients, they'll say, I've learned lessons, because I always open up and ask them, what are lessons learned you learned from mom and dad that now you either want to emulate or avoid? And a lot of those stories would have a theme of saying, my dad made a lot of bad investments, right? And typically that's investing into people's ideas, families, visions. And that haunts me. And I carry that with my clients and say, go for it. Go swing for the fences. But I want to give you enough bullets in the chamber. You can keep on swinging. And how do we ensure that? As you make more money, pay yourself first and then go back into the game, right? So as you pay yourself, then we have a diversified plan with a lot of infrastructure in place, because as you pay yourself, you're creating yourself an asset and you're making yourself bankable and you're making yourself legit, so that if you ever want to scale up, you need a paper trail to be able to do that, right? Oftentimes I feel like with social media, especially going back in there, we try to shortcut things, and we could probably shortcut things to some form of success, but to take it to new heights, I have to make you as legitimate as can be. I need to make sure on paper you reflect a good steward to a bank. I need to make sure that if you're going to have an operation that's going to employ over 200 people, that financially you can absorb that kind of shock. So we owe it to people that you're going to be affecting new worlds to just make sure that you are a good steward of your business. I want you to keep on reinvesting, but let's put some money aside so that we have a contingency game plan. And oftentimes it gets so overlooked. But what the cool thing about that is that safe harbor of cash can get wildly diverse and do some really cool things. So you can become your own bank. You can leverage these assets, grow 10x yourself as well there. So does that help a little bit?
Totally. I like this because I'm looking at this, and this is a long-term play. So if you're listening to this, Ulises has a graph pulled up. It's like a 0 to 2 year, a 2 year, 10 year, and then beyond, and kind of what you should do with your money. I want to kind of transition. I think this might be a good segue on something else you will be speaking at our next at Cleaning Profits 2.0 in September is succession planning. When I see something like this, all that profit and cash, and you put it into mutual funds and investment account, it's the compound effect. If you're in business for the next 20 years and you compound that for 20 years, there's a point in business where you're no longer in business. Like maybe you succeed and you sell the business, you give that off. It's a legacy play, something along those lines. But then you're also planning for what happens at 59 when you don't want to work anymore. Like, I'm going to be honest. I love business. Business energizes me, but I'm going to be totally real with everyone listening to this podcast. I'm not doing this damn show at 59 years old. I'm chilling by the lake. And that's my goal, right? Like, so
Before that,
I
right?
think, yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Before
59,
that,
I
but
don't know.
I'm just going off the graph here, but yeah, I like that. So talk about like how maybe that strategy goes into succession planning with the business if you do have goals of getting out someday, Ulises.
Well, and even with business owners, what I love about the businesses that you guys operate is that what you guys don't realize is that you guys are highly scalable and highly profitable business once you kind of get the engine going, right? So a lot of private equity firms love finding firms like yourselves to buy out. So oftentimes we help clients understand what their numbers should be. So I had a client literally last week call me and say, hey, I got offered $1 million check to sell my business. Should I do it? And I had to tell her that check wasn't big enough because she wasn't going to live off of it long enough, right? Like, so it's crazy because this is the first time somebody ever offered her money that size, and I had to tell her she had to turn it down, right? Because that's not the right number, right? So, because to your point, hey, you may not want to retire at 59 and a half, and that's fine. Hey, let's have you semi-retire. Let's have it semi-retire in 5 years. But what's that number got to be, right? Money is like, it's like a tree, right? If we think about it, if we want this tree of life to support us and give us all the fruits that we need for the rest of our life, it's got to be freaking strong, right? So if we're building from scratch, it takes a long time. It takes truly like a decade for people to really be rich. So I think a big myth buster, going back into like your original question, Angel, was like, the second piece of that is like building wealth, first generation wealth takes time. And a person that looks successful probably has been working at his craft for about his or her craft for about 10 years before the world really sees their level of success, right? So truly wealth building sometimes takes patience. However, when we go into your guys' world, you are going to be in a position where you could shorten up that time horizon. And we try to help people understand what your number should be at so you can live off it so that you never have to go back to work ever again, right? You can be semi-retired. So I could say, let's figure out how to put you in a spot to get bought out, right? Is your business scalable? Again, on paper, what is your business showing so that somebody, an investor comes say, I want to buy that asset from you, right? So that's a lot of the work we're really moving into now is putting our clients in a position to get acquired. And if you can get acquired at 6, 8, 10x, and if that number is big enough for you to walk into the sunset, well, heck, you don't have to wait until you're 59 and a half. You can do it now, right? So like those are the discussions we're really looking to have. But a lot of that is also on paper. What does your business look like? Are you healthy? If I took an x-ray, what's that x-ray looking like? Are you taking time bomb? Are you dangling by the thread of the business? Or is this an asset that they're getting cheap? And I'm going to tell you, you got to say no to that check. You could ask for more and you have the confidence knowing you should be asking for more. That's what we're really dialed in these days on, because in the service industries, people don't realize that as much as it's a dirty business, right? It's such a clean business to scale up, right? It's a process-oriented business, and I can replicate that on a national level. So private equity firms who are these sophisticated Wall Street players dressed in pinstripe suits, very intimidating space, want to acquire the dirty businesses because that's the juiciest contracts to acquire. That's pretty badass.
And you can also help them connect with other people that are not in private equity, right? Like buyers, because there's also like we're gonna have somebody talk in our event about like acquiring each other, right? Growing through acquisition. So that because I know I know for sure private equity is coming into the game. I've heard that a lot of them. I have a question for you because I know we're coming into the top, and I know we always have one question we leave at the end. So that leaves us with two, but I have one real quick for someone like James, for example, that has 2 kids, right? And it's either our company fades out eventually, or one of us buys each other out, or we leave it for the family. Is that what advice would you give someone that might be listening to this? That's like, what if my kid wants it? What if they don't? Like, how do I even start having those conversations, right? Like,
Yeah. So, and I'll tell you, because, I've got 2 boys and our kids, I think, are the same age, right? But from you guys, here's exactly what I would say you guys need to do to be structured. You guys might have this already or may not, right? But you guys are partners, right? Business owners, partners. So you guys need what are called like buy-sell agreements and key man policies on each other. So if God forbid one partner passes away, you're going to be in business with the other person's spouse. So you have to be able to buy out that spouse so that you can continue to take that business at your pulse and your vision. Otherwise, you'll be in business with that spouse, and any decision you want to make around getting a loan, scaling up, you guys have to bounce it off, and you may get along, but you don't want to have to be married to that person, right? So how do you adjust that? You get some kind of key man policy. And the good thing is there's things like term insurance that could be pennies on a dollar. You guys are young, so you can get like $1 million policy for like $40 a month. I mean, it doesn't break the bank at all. So I would say number one, business owners got to get a buy-sell agreement and get a key man policy on each other. If the event that they pass away, they're buying out that spouse. And you don't break the bank by doing that, especially if you're young and doing that. Second, so you need one life insurance for each other, and then you need a life insurance policy for your families, right? Because if we're not here, that generation of wealth, I could pass along wealth faster through inexpensive term insurance while you're younger, right? So my very first policy I got was like 29 years old for $1 million, and I paid $40 a month. Second bigger policy I got was I went to go meet my father for the first time like in 30 years, and he was in the cartel and he was arrested and deported from the country. So I said, I'm going to need some coverage. So I got an extra $2 million policy. So now I have like over $3 million. But I'm probably paying like $100-something a month. So I tell people, you got to have life insurance to protect your family. And I may never get that money back, but I spend it faster at a dinner, right? So spending $100-something on a dinner versus protecting my family. So second thing is I need a policy for my business partner to buy him out, his spouse out. I need a policy to protect my family, and not something small. You got to get them something legit, right? It's got to be over $1 million. So that's the foundation of it. Secondly, right, is making sure that you guys have good reserves. And then one thing I've been finding out often is making sure that your age receivables, does that have a line of credit, right? working with a bank, an institution to leverage your asset. Because oftentimes you may be building up your cash flow, your cash reserves, but your asset actually piece that's not, people don't realize, is that their age receivables is an asset on the balance sheet. And you can leverage that right now where a bank will give you up to 50% of that age receivable as a line of credit. So that gives you a little bit more breathing room. So we work, hey, do you have a line of credit that's big enough? You might have had one early on, but as your business grows, is that large enough? Lastly is having, as your kids are able to start to work, put them on payroll, right? So my sons right now are 8 and 6. They're a little early on this, but one of the cool things that we work with a lot of business owners on is how to set your kids up to become millionaires. And one of the cool projections we're going to run at our event is how much you have to pump into different vehicles. And there's things like Roth IRAs that you can open up for your kids. But the cool thing is we'll show if you can put your kids on payroll at the age of 14, your business can pay them a salary. That's an expense to your business. You're going to take some of that money, put it into a Roth IRA for about 5 to 6 years, never dropping any more money in there, and that'll make them $1 million by the time they retire. That's like setting up your kids with generational wealth, right? So, but also like the big thing is talking to your kids and your family around what you're doing, right? And not keeping these things a secret, because it's also the generational wealth component of it too. So it's just awareness and literacy and creating community where people are aware of these ideas that provide that generational wealth, right? So it's getting some insurance in place, investing into the stock market, talking about these things. And we'd like to think that if we hold on to the secret sauce, we'll be the only ones that are successful. But the reality of it is, if you tell your secrets, you're going to become stronger because you're going to put an X in your back and it's going to have everybody going after you, but you're going to work harder and it's going to take you to the next level. So I promise you, like, you'll build in more wealth and you become a better example to your family of what to do. And that also changes generational wealth too. So generational wealth is infrastructure financially, putting some contingencies in place and plan too, but also like a mindset of are you going to be taking things to the next level and being a good steward of your business, right? Making sure that you're not just hitting home runs, but you're having a place to capture some money so that if you don't, you've got a safe haven for yourself. So those are just some themes. Hopefully that's helpful.
Nah, super helpful. Super helpful. That was fun. And James and I had to have conversations now. You know what's happening, James? Every time we have a guest now, I don't know if you've noticed, we've been learning from them. And now we're asking, like, we're having conversations afterwards. We're like, okay, what about acquisition? Okay, what about our banking? Are we working with the right bank? Okay, how do we, like, it's kind of cool to, like, if our brains going like crazy through all these guests, I can't wait for the event. 2 questions for you. I know James is going to ask one of them, right? James, you have that
Yeah.
the game, and then I have one real quick. Man, why'd you decide to go to the event? Why'd you decide to participate in the event? What sold you, other than our great sales skills? I'm just kidding. No, but what got you to attend?
I mean, a big thing is my belief in the value you guys drive. One of the things that really impressed me about you guys is it's funny when I meet a salesperson, I'm waiting for the pitch, and I feel like you guys can connect the dots to business really, really well and authentically. So for me, I really feel like you guys are just really smart, intelligent guys that have good business acumen. So a lot of times you hear about like people trying to lead things, but I don't ever really feel like they've experienced those experiences that they're selling. But I really feel like you guys have solid business acumen. You guys are sharp guys. So like the good looks, the baby faces,
This guy.
like, you guys are sharp, and I think people are really going to be impressed and be taken aback by how sharp you guys are and the amount of value you're going to bring in. Because I mean that really resonated with me. So just being a tide to people like yourselves, I think that's huge. I'm really a big believer that iron sharpens iron, and I think you guys bring that to the table. So that was a big reason why. And I really do believe that you guys are building a really unique community of anti-crab effect people, right? Where you want to help people grow, not pull them down. And culturally wise, as you hit these thresholds of $1 million, people are going to have and be that an envy for people's success, where you guys are creating a safe space for people to be successful and to share that success, but not from a pompous look at me, but more like, hey, let's win together, let's learn together. And I think being a part of a community like that, that's something that's very true to my core values. And I want to be a part of you guys' journey because the story isn't out on you guys yet. And you sent the picture over text the other day, and I really do believe in those cheesy things where I love, and in 10 years, 15, 20 years, we can look back at the picture and say, wow, we were young pups, and we thought we knew it all then. But now look at how much different life has changed, and to be a part of that journey, that'd be really cool. So those are the reasons why I said yes to you guys.
Nice,
Hopefully,
because we sat on the same table, so that was nice. Yeah, that was nice. We didn't know what
That's
we were
awesome.
doing. All
That's
right,
awesome,
James,
man. All
you
right, man. So
ready?
every show, man, we play question roulette. We have this little white box. We have no clue. We literally have zero clue what the questions are. Are you down to answer whatever question comes out? Once we ask it on the show, it never gets asked again.
yeah. Oh
All
crap!
right,
Okay.
here we go.
All right,
False.
here we go. Yeah. If you were to ask one interview question to your significant other, what would it
Oh,
be?
that's a good one.
Do you think I'm fat?
And they couldn't. They didn't say they had to tell the truth. Just so you know, they didn't say
Right.
that.
There you go, man. I know you're a big family guy, and I love how you always uplift your children and wife too on social media. That's a big core value of ours, man. So kind of fitting that you got a random. We've never had a question talking about one's spouse on this show, so there you go, man. It's fitting that it was for you.
Well, you better bring your workout clothes, man, when you come down to Denver because we're gonna have a. We haven't announced. We've announced it by the time this comes out, but we're gonna have a special workout super early the second day with somebody that definitely works out for a
Nice.
living.
Oh shoot. Okay. All right. I
Yeah,
like it.
what is he, James? What is he?
So
I have to be careful how I say it.
he's an Army Ranger. He was an Army Ranger, Green Beret, and in Special Forces. The only thing he pretty much didn't accomplish or didn't try was to be a SEAL. But to have someone be the trifecta of Beret, Ranger, and Special Forces is
So
gonna
I know y'all
lead the
work out,
way
man.
for
So
us.
be ready. Be ready. He's gonna bring us. We're all gonna work out together, and he's gonna
I
bring
love
it.
it.
So be ready.
Bring the pre-workout. I love it.
There you go. Well, man, thanks so much for being here, brother. Super excited to have you during the event. Super blessed to keep building on this relationship, and let's go change some lives, man.
Love it. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me, guys. This was
You got
fun.
it, brother. Thanks, James.